Good morning and welcome to Gunner Shot once again. In today's peek into everyday China, we're going to see why China is worried about India. Make no mistake, China is worried about India. Let me put things in perspective. In terms of sheer size and scale, it is only India which can replace China in almost everything. The Chinese have a fixation of being number one. Unless they show continuous success, the Communist Party cannot justify its existence. Hence, it has to beat USA as the number one. Also, it has to keep India down because it is only India which has the potential to beat China. And China understands that India, like itself, is a civilizational state. And most importantly, with the way geopolitics have gone about in the recent past and the way re-globalization is taking place, China has all the reasons to be worried about India. I'll go to the extent of saying if China is worried about any two countries, it is USA first and India next. In this context, we in India need to know how China looks at us. It's very easy for us to imagine what China is, or rather comment on it. But how does China look at us? That's the important thing. Right. I'll tee off by first putting into context what's the overall relationship between USA and China and where it is heading. In the recent past, the tone between USA and China has become shrill. Their relations are going down south. And this balloon gate, which has happened, actually only chills the relationship, right? It's not going to enhance equations between them. Now, add to that, this is an article, yesterday's article from the South China Morning Post, right? And it talks of the tech war. If there's a new war which is on, it's the tech war. China is being starved of chips, and its bid to topple US at number one economy faces unprecedented pressure. Now, in this article, the authors talk about how China is being squeezed dry out of the semiconductor game and how it's going to affect their economy and their overall status. And this article also reinforces the obsession of China to be number one and recognized as number one. It is in this context that one has to assess as to how China looks at India. Okay, let's take a dive into the Chinese perspective of India and its equations. Right? This talks of the tech war, right? Again, it's a continuation of the previous thing. US India tech deal could speed up global supply chain realignment, which will hurt India. It's, it talks of the new US India pact on development of semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and telecommunication. And it says it's touched a nerve in Beijing, right? It also says while India has emerged as a beneficiary of the global supply chain realignment, bureaucracies could limit the efficiency of the deal. That means they're pointing a finger at the Indian bureaucracy, right? Well, there is some logic to it, and our bureaucracy should be alive to this whole issue. Okay, This article talks of a new partnership between US and India. What does this new partnership target? It targets semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and telecommunication, amongst other areas. And they feel that this could, accelerate the realignment of uh, global supply chains and usher in an era of new re-globalized world, right? And it will always be at the expense of China's interests. That's what their analysts feel, right? Now, the details of US India initiative on critical and emerging technologies, ISET, which was published last week, and it also includes cooperation in quantum and defense. Now, you're looking at five areas interconnected, right? You're talking of semiconductors, you're talking of artificial intelligence, you're talking of telecommunications, quantum computing, and defense. And this tucks in very well with the overall military technologies of this century, is a series which I'm doing. And hence the equations between this series and the others. Right. Now, the this article goes on further to say that the collaboration has touched a nerve in Beijing. They're worried. They're worried that the US is heading towards economic and technological decoupling from India. Sorry, from China. They're also worried that it is only India which can match or surpass China in scale, size, and capability. Okay? Now, this what I mean, hereafter I'll read what is there. While the US has made steps to contain China's semiconductor advancement to protect national security, it has pledged to support the development of a semiconductor design, manufacturing, and fabrication ecosystem in India, and to help the South Asian nation develop a skilled workforce to play a bigger role in the global chip industry, a development that analysts say can weaken China's standing. Okay, they're very worried. By roping in India, the US can promote the initiative as part of friendshoring, which Janet Allen has already mentioned about, and to make it an ally in the supply chain alternative to China. And all this has come out in their global times. So the developing Indo US relationship is pinching China. Like I said earlier, China wants to better US and keep India down. The worst situation for it is if India and US get together. India and US getting together is too big for China to handle. Now, this is a very interesting article which is there in the South China Morning Post, and this article came about month two back. But I thought I'll reiterate it in today's context. This is by a Turkish author. It says in the global power struggle, India is determined to remain a friend to all and to none. Right? What does this article further say? Right? It is becoming increasingly clear that we are witnessing the transition from a US led liberal order to something that is yet to be determined. And perhaps there is no country so fortunately positioned as India to engage with all sides in this power struggle. Right? He also goes on to say, while holding tight to its tradition of non alignment, India is nevertheless part of several cliques, including the Quad, the Indo Pacific Economic Forum, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and also the Russia's Eastern Economic Front. So, India, as you know, is now the chair of G20, is also the chair of the SCO, also an important partner of the Quad, so it can play all angles. And this is getting recognition from Turkey. And it's being published in a in Chinese media. China has reason to worry. And that is why I have brought this article forth. Right. This article also says that New Delhi seeks to assert its own capabilities and aspirations as the world's fifth largest economy, strategically located in the Indian Ocean and home to about 18% of the global population, not to mention its vast diaspora, which has made a mark globally. So China is worried about the Indo-US cooperation, and the Turkish author writes about India's growing strength, friend to all, friend to none, in a, in the Chinese media, for the Chinese to see. Obviously, India means much more to them than it was earlier. Right? Okay. In this article, it says despite US unease, India may be its best partner in a multipolar world. China also recognizes now that the best options for US today are with India. And they're worried about it. So far, India and US have not got together. So in history, but when these two great democracies and a superpower and a great power, a civilizational power, get together, it means something. And this getting together is vastly different from the way China and USA got together for the past 50 years. Right. This is about the Sino Indian relations. China and India often clash in the border regions. But are those skirmishes getting worse? Last week, an article came which said, look, there can be more clashes in Ladakh. And it's also another article came which spoke about, you know, JNK. It also spoke as to why China had to get into JNK in the backdrop of Article 70 being dropped and Pakistan's status. Overall, put together, it's a very clear indication China is not your friend, nor does it intend to be. It will clash with us, and we should be cognizant of this fact. Leave everything alone. China will do anything in its power to keep India down. And one of the most effective ways of keeping India down is by nibbling at the LAC. It is not by coming into the ocean. Ground, the value of ground, Mother Earth is most important. Now, that's the article I was talking about. As India asserts itself, Kashmir looks set for crucial, unpredictable few years. Now, this article is totally biased towards Pakistan and anti India and pro China. I had actually explained this full details about this article in my last video on the continental versus maritime debate. You will find that it's very mischievous. It, it portrays a Kashmir which is still in flames, which it is not. Right? So you will find these insidious articles which keep coming from South China Morning Post. After all, if you are a growing power and you mean business, and if China is worried about you, they have to do something, and they will get back to you through their media. Right? It also talks of the ideology of hate, and they've roped in Gandhiji's great grandson to talk of it. This ideology of hate business is being magnified beyond proportions. Yes, in India, there are a few extreme elements, like in any other society. There are quite a few movements which are going on. You have a left of center movement, you have a right of center movement, and you have a centrist movement. But every small, uh, event gets blown up in the Chinese media, right? It it is portrayed as if India is full of people who hate each other. It is also portrayed as if that India is a weak democracy. And it is also portrayed in many cases that India is being led up the garden path by USA. Right? And incidents like these, which happened in Assam, Indian police arrest 1,800 men in crackdown on underage marriage, get blown up. Right? It is portrayed as if India has nothing else to do but exploit underage girls. This is the price we have to pay for our rise. And we should be prepared to handle this adverse gaze with maturity and with a bit of equanimity. You can't go around like a hothead shooting your mouth off every time someone talks something. You have to dismantle them with intelligence. Unfortunately, many of us react emotively to these issues. That won't do. We'll have to change course on that. Then look at this. This is something which I wouldn't have known, but for the fact that it has come out from the South China Morning Post. Initially, there was a lot of talk that India is buying Russian oil, and we were being vilified for that particular act in the Western media and the US. That why are we supporting the Russian war effort by buying their oil? But there's a turnaround. Today, we buy oil at discounted rates from Russia and sell it to US and the West, as per this article, which is true. And we are making our economy work for it. We are reaping in the profits. And if today this we stop importing Russian oil and stop refining it and exporting it, they'll have a problem. The world has started accepting the fact that without Russian oil, we can't really get on. You need it in the bag. The West and the USA have accepted this backdoor entry, and the Chinese are worried about it. Mind you, Chinese are also doing the same thing. They buy oil from Russia, refine it, and they're selling it to the world. But now they have a competitor in India to do so. Okay, then of course, this issue will come up on and off, right? About the Adani Group, the Hindenburg Conference report, and everything. All this will get entangled and put together and rolled, and it will go against the government, right? And they are taking a personal barb at the Prime Minister. Expect it, right? We need to expect it. Businesses go down and come up. It's not as if they don't. They do their own tricks. The market principles have to play out. Hasn't it happened in China? The whole like Evergrande and all these collapsed? No one asked, but one Adani group collapses. It's not even collapsed just because of a report from someone, a motivated report at best. The way it is playing out, right? Uh, it is linked to the prime minister and the weakness of the government. When the entire property sector of China was collapsing, no one linked it to the weakness of Xi Jinping, right? And when Lehman Brothers happened, it was not linked to the president of USA, but some one company in India goes down, it's linked directly to the prime minister. So expect this. We need to be mature enough to handle all this. Okay, then of course this latest thing I've not seen it come into action. India to ban Chinese betting and lending apps because they are violating our security laws and they are a threat to all of us. Let's not have any doubt. I hope the government, puts it out very fast. I'm not aware. Maybe the government has already done it. All right. Oh, I'll leave you with a thought. I put out two articles last month. One on India as the emerging third pole. And second, I spoke about the geoeconomics of India rise. You see both these articles and see the views which are coming from China, right? And you'll see that where India is heading. We need to have the confidence that India is rising as a third pole and is destined to become a great power. There will be ups and downs in the whole story, but we are preordained to do it. Why we are preordained to do it is what I've explained in these articles. And it is by cold logic, not dogma. It is not by, enthusiasm. It is by cold logic. Now, if our rise is predestined and preordained, especially in this scenario, the West is weakening, China is on shaky legs. We are the fastest growing economy, so we must expect some reaction from China, and China will go all out to put barriers in our rise. And we need to understand what's happening in China and how China looks at us. Both. That is why this series on a peek into everyday China is important. Right? It tells you what's happening in China and it will also tell you how China is looking at us. That will help us formulate nuanced positions vis-a-vis China in global affairs. That's all I have in today's episode. Thank you and Jai Hind.